Today I'm sewing and sharing a sheer dress pattern using Simplicity 8545. This dress would also look great using an opaque fabric, but if you'd like to create a look that's similar to that of the pattern cover, you can also find a sew-along for the slip dress included with this pattern on this channel. You can find this pattern at your local fabric store and online. I've left a link for you below so you can check out all the details, grab a copy, and sew along with me. So grab that pattern, cut out your fabric, mark your dots and notches, and let's get started. I've transferred the darts from my pattern piece onto my front bodice piece using a tracing wheel and tracing paper. Now I'm going to fold my dart in half and pin through one dart leg and out the other. Doing this for both darts. Now I'll take the darts to my sewing machine and sew from the bottom to the point, leaving thread tails at the point so that I can tie them in knots. Press the front darts toward your center front. Repeat this process to sew the darts into your back bodice pieces, sewing those darts and then pressing them toward the center back. Place your front and back bodice pieces right sides together and pin your shoulder seams and your side seams. Sew your shoulder seams and your side seams with a 5/8 inch seam allowance and then finish your seams in your preferred method. In this case, because the lace that I'm using does not fray, I'm not going to finish my seams. I'm simply going to press them open. To start preparing the sleeves, we're going to sew easing stitches into the top of the sleeve cap. You're going to sew using the longest stitch on your machine with about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, sewing from outer notch to outer notch, all along the top of the sleeve, doing this for both sleeves. Make sure to leave tails at the end so that you have thread to pull for easing. Now that our easing stitches are in place, we can pin the underarm seams. Fold the material right sides together and pin. Do this for both sleeves and then sew with a 5/8 inch seam allowance and then finish your seams if necessary. I've taken my sleeve bindings to the ironing board and I've pressed the long unnotched edges to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch for both sleeve bindings. Now I'm going to unfold those memory creases and fold the sleeve bindings in half right sides together, matching the short edges, and pin in place. Sew these short edges with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seams open. Place the notched edge of your binding right sides together with the bottom of your sleeve, matching the seams, and pin in place all the way around. Sew the binding to the bottom of the sleeve with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Press the seam allowance that you just created down toward the binding. Then we're going to fold back the edge of the binding that we pressed earlier. Then we're going to fold it once again so this now folded edge rests right on top of our stitching line. And pin in place. Continue folding that folded edge of the binding right over that seam line, pinning all the way around. Then we can take it back to the sewing machine and sew close to this inner folded edge all the way around the bottom of the sleeve. And repeat these steps to finish the bottom of your remaining sleeve. Now place the top of your sleeve right sides together with its corresponding bodice armhole and pin in place starting at the underarm seam, pinning to each of the notches on either side for the front and the back. Then you can start pulling your basting stitches to ease in the fullness of the top of the sleeve into the armhole all the way around, and pin in place. And repeat to insert your other sleeve into the remaining armhole. Now that the sleeves are pinned in place, take it to your sewing machine and sew the sleeves into the armhole with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Then finish your seams if needed. Place your front and back skirt pieces right sides together and pin your side seams, pinning your side seams on both sides. Sew both side seams with a 5/8 inch seam allowance and then finish your seams as needed. Now we're going to take our skirt pieces back to the sewing machine and we're going to baste all along the top edge, starting your basting at one top notch of your center back skirt, using the longest stitch on your machine and leaving thread tails at the start. Sew with about a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way to the other side until you get to the notch at your opposite center back, again leaving thread tails at the end of your stitching. Now place the top basted edge of your skirt right sides together with the bottom of your bodice, matching your center backs and your side seams, and pin in place. Pin together at the side seams and center back on the opposite side as well. Then you can start pulling your basting stitches to fit the skirt to the bottom of the bodice all the way across and pin in place. Then we're going to sew the skirt to the bottom of the bodice all the way across from center back to center back with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Finish your seams in your preferred method. I've taken my neckline binding to the ironing board and I folded up the lower unmarked edge to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch all the way across. Now we're going to place our neckline binding right sides together with the neckline, matching the dots from your neckline pattern piece with your shoulder seams, also matching your center fronts and pinning in place. Also match your center backs and pin in place. And then take it to your sewing machine and sew your binding to the neckline with a 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way from center back to center back. Now we're going to finish this neckline binding in the same way as we did for the bottom of the sleeves. Take the folded edge that you pressed with your iron and fold it to the inside of the garment so that it now covers the seam allowance and the folded edge covers the stitching line. Pin in place in this way all the way across. Now take it to your sewing machine and edge stitch close to this inner fold all the way across from center back to center back. Before we start installing the zipper into the center back of the garment, if you are working with fabric that's prone to fraying, you can finish the seams of your center back separately now. Using a serger or a zigzag stitch, you can finish those seams from the top of the dress to the bottom of the dress for one center back and then for the other. The pattern calls for a 22-inch long invisible zipper. I'm going to open up my zipper and take it to my ironing board so I can press open these coils so that they lay flat from top to bottom, and do this for both zipper tapes. Now I'm going to place the right side of my zipper tape right sides together with the right side of my back dress. I want my top zipper stop to be in line with the top neckline seam, and I want my zipper teeth to be 5/8 of an inch away from the outer raw edge of the dress, and pin in place all the way down. Now take this to your sewing machine and using your zipper foot or an invisible zipper foot, sew close to the zipper teeth from the top of the zipper all the way to the bottom, as close as your presser foot will allow you to get to the bottom of the zipper. Now that the right side of my zipper tape is sewn in place, I'm going to close the zipper and then place the left side of the zipper tape right sides together with the left side of the dress. I'm going to start by lining up my waistline seam. I'm going to allow the left center back of the dress to extend beyond the left zipper tape so that my zipper teeth will still be 5/8 of an inch away from the raw edge on this side, just as we did for the right side. And I'm going to pin the zipper tape to the top of the left dress at the neckline as well, making sure that those necklines on the right and left side are lined up. Now I'm going to open up the zipper. Now that I have those two landmarks in place, I can continue pinning the left zipper tape to the left center back from top to bottom. Now sew this zipper tape in place, sewing close to those zipper teeth, just as we did on the right side. Now that both sides of the zipper are sewn in place, go ahead and close that zipper. Place those bottoms of the dress right sides together and pin together from the bottom of the zipper to the bottom of the dress. I'm going to start sewing this section still using my zipper foot so that I can sew as close to the bottom of that zipper stitching as possible. After a few inches, I'll switch back to my regular foot and continue sewing this seam with a 5/8 inch seam allowance to the bottom of the dress. Now with the zipper still closed, we can finish these edges where the zipper tape is extending beyond the neckline of the dress. Take your zipper tape that's extending beyond and fold it over that center back seam allowance. Then fold that center back zipper seam allowance back toward the neckline of the dress. Then stitch along the neckline just as far as the zipper tape through all thicknesses, just using a needle and thread. Do the same thing on the other side, folding the top of that zipper tape down onto the seam allowance of the center back, and then folding that seam allowance back toward the garment, and hand stitching through all thicknesses along the top of the dress. Now the very last step is to hem the bottom of the dress. Because the lace that I'm using has a scalloped finish along the edges, I don't need to hem this dress. But for all other fabrics, I would choose a narrow hem, taking the bottom raw edge of the garment to the ironing board and pressing it up to the wrong side by 1/2 inch, and then on the crease, and edge stitching close to that inner fold all the way along the bottom of the dress. And now your dress is complete. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you check out my other videos for more great sewing inspiration, and I'll see you in the next video.